Welcome back to Elijah Plus, and welcome back to the Cupertino Uncovered podcast. It's been a minute because we are college students and
Yes.
we have a lot of things to do. So we finally can come back and convene, and we have a lot to talk about over the past couple weeks that we've missed just because of new controversies, again, with having 8 gigabytes of starting RAM for a lower or mid-tier MacBook Pro. And then we're going to talk about iPads, and then the little taste of Vision Pro that I'm going to have with these new collaboration with RayBan and Meta. And then we're going to talk about Vision Pro a little bit, and then RCS at the end. So stay tuned for that. And then if you don't want to hear a certain topic, I'll put chapters below so you guys can just skip to a certain topic. So as we all know, it's controversial that 8 gigabytes of starting RAM is with the mid-tier level or entry level of a MacBook Pro starting at $1,599, and people are complaining how it should be the standard of 16 gigabytes, which I can understand because you're already paying, $1,600 for a device, and then switching to 16 gigabytes of RAM is an extra cost of like $200. So Apple is really taxing on their Apple tax when it comes to upgrade of storage or their RAM. So what do you guys think of how Apple is doing this? Like, is it okay? Like, is it not that bad? Is it that big of a deal? Or
I don't like it. Obviously, I think we've come to a point, especially with the MacBooks, where there are so many different price tiers for all of the different Macs, and it's just become too much. Like, it's confusing, and then with every single increment of storage and now RAM, we see $100, $200, $300 increments. It's a lot, and if you're already paying $1,500, sometimes $2,000, that stuff should be included.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. 16 gigabytes of RAM should be custom with the Pro for sure, because 8 gigabytes it doesn't work.
Especially in 2023.
Yeah, I actually saw a meme. I can't remember exactly what it says, but back in when they went to the moon, 5 gigabytes of RAM sent us to the moon.
right.
Now we have 8 gigs, and it's 8 gigs. I'm dying inside.
We can go to
So
Mars
I
with
thought that was
right.
really funny seeing that, but it's why? Why?
I feel like it's because I also seen a Twitter or X, but I refuse to call it X. So
It's
Twitter
Twitter.
post.
It's Twitter.
It's Twitter. The Twitter post of how they were comparing their MacBook when it was called MacBook at the time, starting at 8 gigabytes of RAM, and then there's still having that continue to their Apple Silicon version chips. And I mean, I can't have a lot to say when it comes to comparing those two because I never had a MacBook at that time. But what I've been hearing is that since this is a, technologically better version of what they were using with Intel, 8 gigabytes is sufficient where it's not going to have the same performance like an Intel's version of 8 gigabytes in the past. So I can kind of see that because when we compare it to the M1 has been phenomenal for the past years before we've entered into the M3 versions of these Macs. And so if people are doing basic tasks or they just decide that they want to have this higher end Pro just because of a port that they would need, like a HDMI port or the SD card slot, they don't have to spend $2,000 on a computer. Rather, they can just get the base, of a $1,599 version of a MacBook and have 8 gigabytes of RAM that's not going to push the computer, to its limits. So I'm like, I do have the M3 8 gigabytes version of the MacBook Pro, and I have had zero problems with it. I've done a little editing with Final Cut. I've done not photo editing, but I have done multiple tabs open, multiple applications open. It hasn't run slow for me, so I feel like Apple is somewhat knowing what they're doing, but they feel like they can get away with a little bit just because Apple knows there's not a lot of competition since the M versions of Macs have been performing so well.
Yeah, the question is how long will they continue to get away with this until they have they're almost forced to change it based on consumer feedback. And I think you bring up a good point. Just like at the end of the day, just like with any Apple product, you really have to ask yourself before buying, what kind of consumer am I? Am I a pro user where I use a lot of CPU intense applications and I need that extra processing power, and I need more of these pro models, or am I sort of a basic, college student user, for example, with kind of like me, with just sort of basic application needs, and I don't really need all that extra computing power. And I think that'll help you a lot when determining what model is best for you, and also save you a lot of money along the way too.
Or you're like the middle tier and you happen to be in college but also make YouTube videos.
Right.
So
yeah, it all depends who you
use
are.
Final Cut or Procreate or whatever.
Yeah.
What is your, needs rather than your when it comes to making content or making things, whether with graphic design or interior design or any type of rendering from that aspect.
Right.
For me, with the 8 gigs, as you guys know, I stream games. Sometimes I use the computer to stream like Minecraft mod packs. I could stream like 7 Days to Die, if you guys know what that game is. But like I need the extra gigabytes as well for that. But that's why I also have a Pro, is to be able to have the CPU to run those games and stream it at the same time.
Right.
So
that's a good use case
that's
for
why,
you.
Yes,
yeah.
that's why I have the higher version rather than just the base model.
Yeah.
And like I could use the extra gigabytes with that too, but
yeah,
not in my power.
right.
So it's really just depending. I feel like, is 8 gigabytes that controversial in 2023? To each their own.
Yes.
But I feel like it doesn't need to be blown super out of proportion just because of how it's a new age version of 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I just seen a video from Daily Tech, and he did a wonderful explanation. I'll link his video in the description. And PlayStation, I am not talking to you. And just because with explaining the M versions of the Macs and seeing that what storage of gigabytes do we need for RAM, it's explaining how like maybe we're like a student and 8 gigabytes of RAM is sufficient enough where we're getting our toes in the water. And then if we need a little more intensive work done, then we can do the more standardized versions for what like Adobe and other rendering sites need. So you can do like the 16 gigabytes, and maybe you need more than that. So that's more like an executive thing, or maybe you just need double because you just want double, like you can afford that.
Right.
So it really just depends. And for me, where I am at, 8 gigabytes has been fine for me. I haven't had any problems. Comparing it to my 2019 Intel version of the MacBook Pro, it was, I was running iMovie and it had only, I think I was just using HD video, and I think the video was probably about like 10 minutes, how I would do my normal videos at the time, and the fans were blowing. It was kind of like it was going to take off, and I'm just like, this is really sad since I bought this, but now we have these versions of Macs, and I feel like it's really great for where it's at, and Apple optimizing its unified memory and all the things, so it just runs, their famous words, seamlessly.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good take on it. Yeah. Do you guys want to move on and talk about the iPads now?
Yeah, that's fine.
2024.
So I have a personal take. I feel like they should get rid of the iPad mini.
Ooh.
And technically get rid of the iPad normal, like the iPad, just the name, and then merge the two, so it's like just iPad, where we take the word mini like not so literal, and so we have like a 9-inch display or 8.9-inch display of an iPad. We have it big enough where you can use the magic keyboard, or the keyboard, smart keyboard that they have offered, and kind of just like mix the two, where it's like it's not super high end like the abilities that it has with the iPad Air or iPad Pro, but it's not something that's like, too cheap either, where it can like fit in the best of both worlds with education and then people who don't need an Air or who don't need a Pro iPad, just so it can like simplify the iPad lineup as it is, because of how like the mini gets treated like sort of like the iPad, but then at the same time can get the latest version of the chip after like a distance of time. And then the iPad Air is getting somewhat of an iPad Pro treatment because it does have the higher end like M1 version, and then the iPad Pro is getting the M2. So I feel like if we just like cut out the middleman and just have like iPad in its like combined version of the iPad mini, and where it does have access to the Apple Pencil Gen 2 or have that option of Apple Pencil USB-C. I feel like that would help clear the lineup, but
simplify things. Yeah, I think that's a bold.
Don't hate me. I'm just saying.
Bold statement, but I do agree with some parts of that. For the expected 2024 lineup, I'm very excited about the OLED display. I think
be really good.
They're very thin, they're a lot lighter, and obviously I think they look really, really good, especially depending on what types of applications you're using. So I'm very excited for that. Personally, I'm not really in the market for an iPad. When I first came to college, it was kind of like the classic debate: do you get a laptop or do you get a tablet?
Or do you get both?
Or do you get both?
Or do you
Because some
get
people,
both? Yeah.
you can afford both, get both. But I've always been more of a laptop person than a tablet person. But I can appreciate the improvements Apple has been making incrementally to almost make the iPad almost like a laptop, especially with the Magic Keyboards and the Apple Pencil. So I definitely do still think it is a really good purchase, especially in the upcoming year 2024 with these new ones coming out.
But it is very expensive.
Yeah, a lot of price hikes we're seeing. Well, we're expected to see in these new lineups. $100, $200 from the 2023 lineup. So again, kind of similar to the Macs, another price hike. So what do you guys think consumers will be thinking about that?
I just don't know how it would be reasonable. Because I know for me I love my iPad Pro, but I feel like sometimes it gets hard to love it as much because of how we have the M2 version in the iPad Pro lineup, but then when you try to run Final Cut or when I'm running Procreate, and especially while it's charging, it runs super hot, and I feel like I have to pause my work so I can let the iPad cool down and let it charge up. And then sometimes while it's charging and I'm running Procreate or Final Cut, it's it randomly dims, and then I'm like, okay, what is happening? Because I'm distracted, and I'm like, okay, let me let it cool off again. And I love the form factor. I love how I can just have the option to have it be a computer-esque vibe of an iPad, but then I love having the touchscreen version and just having that option. But my problem is I feel like they need to have a little bit more of thickness with the iPad, just because I feel like they need to add some passive cooling like they did for the the MacBook Air, because they have no fans, but it's been running fine when you run certain apps on it like Final Cut, and it doesn't get too hot. And so I feel like if that's the case with the MacBook Air for the M2 and the M1, have the same level to where we can have passive cooling for this iPad Pro. So hopefully they do it in the M3 version. They also mentioned there's going to be a redesign, and I'm like, well, what other redesign besides maybe OLED screens? But
well, I did read that the Pro is expected to get the M3 chip, so that could be a reason for the delay or the absence of a iPad.
Any iPads this year
because maybe they're finishing the development for the M3 and they want to release the M3. Well, they want to release the whole lineup at once, so that could be an explanation. But with you're talking about with kind of all these applications and the cooling, I think as these more again CPU intensive applications are coming to the iPad, like Final Cut and some of these games I think we're seeing on Apple Arcade, I think the iPads have to adapt to be able to handle these intense applications. So hopefully, especially the Pros with the M3 will be able to handle this better, and hopefully they will make them a little thicker so the cooling's a little better inside.
So I don't think anyone will have a problem with a slightly thicker iPad, as long as it functions for people who are trying to create. I feel like that will be a major plus. That will we rather have the function over form a little bit over this.
So. There's definitely a balance. Do you have an iPad, Colton?
We used to, but I mean, it was it was a really old one.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was one of the very first ones. So it would always get really hot just watching YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I've been looking into them for sure because of that reason also. But I just feel like it'd be easier to just carry around instead of having the computer. Then I can have the lap or the iPad for school stuff and my laptop for gaming.
Right. And also another thing, I really strongly believe Face ID is not a Pro feature. We
Is
have.
it? I did not know.
We
Is it
have.
actually?
It's not.
Yeah, it's not a. Well, it is a pro feature, but I'm saying in general, like it's not, because we have Face ID on the non-pro levels of the iPhones, and then it's like you have Touch ID with the iPad Air, and I'm like, give us Face ID on the Air. I would way prefer an iPad Air with Face ID. That's why I went with the iPad Pro in the first place, just because it had Face ID. I do not like how the Touch ID is still on the iPad Air, and that's the only thing I request. Please make it Face ID. You can keep the 60 hertz refresh rate. I just want Face ID on the iPad Air, and because I just felt like it was like you always have to reach around, or you have to like place it carefully. It was always a little too thin, for my opinion, where it's just easy when you just open it, you look at the screen, it unlocks and opens. So hopefully they add that to the M2 version of the iPad Air. But that's only really my request. Just make it slightly thicker if they're going to do that for the iPad Pro for M3. That way they can have passive cooling, and then when you're working on applications like Final Cut and Procreate, it doesn't overheat. And my thing is, I like Final Cut on iPad because I have the versatility of like using my Apple Pencil, and then I can like write on my videos and
that's cool.
make it more personalized rather than on my Mac, where it's like I'm typing everything out. But all in all, it's just like those are my requests, and let's see how they turn out in 2024.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it'll be really interesting. I think 2024 altogether is going to be a big year for Apple.
I mean,
with the
especially
Vision Pro,
Yeah.
which I think is a
Lord.
good transition.
I can't wait for Vision Pro. But before we get into that, I want to talk about my Tease. So, I think in an earlier podcast, I mentioned how Meta and RayBan have collaborated to make these smart sunglasses, and they also have a version where they can transition. So if you're in like indoors, they have the regular glasses, but when you go outside, they can transition to sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a pair. I used Apple Pay Later. Thank you, Apple Pay Later. And it's very interesting. The setup was kind of long to do. Just
the case is really nice.
The case is really nice. It has a nice leather case. Sorry, Apple, for carbon footprint. But and it's like, I took it out of the case. I like how they are with the thickness on the bars, because I feel like they're not, going to be fragile. And the setup took a little long to do, just because I had to download the app, and then I had to update them, and then I had to, link my accounts into it. But I will say its main highlight that I do like is the speaker quality is really good. I really enjoy listening to music with these. And then the Hey Meta is a little bit laggy when you first put them on. You kind of have to wear them for maybe about 1 to 2 minutes before it like fully realizes what's happening.
You're talking to me.
right. And just like Siri, sometimes Siri takes a minute too to do that. But it's like when you take photos on here, it's pretty good. It's not I don't think it's the best quality, because I prefer my iPhone over that.
Right.
But when also taking videos, it's actually pretty good as well. So I feel like this has been my little tease of what Vision Pro is going to be like, just because of having something on my face where I can say, hey, I don't want to trigger your series, and then just be able to like record and then take photos and all the things like that. I feel like this is like the definite version of what Vision Pro could be like in this smaller form factor.
Yeah.
But just to have a taste of what smart glasses or smart things that are over your face. It sounds crazy, it sounds bizarre, but I do like the little taste of what I've been able to have, especially with the sound quality and how the speakers go into your ear. They can get pretty loud as well. And yeah, just really enjoy these so far. Is it worth the $329? I would have to say no, just because of how like software-wise, of how Meta is a little glitchy, and then you gotta sign all these things saying yes, I give permissions, yes, I give permissions, yes, I give permissions. But RayBan is a good quality for sunglasses, so I feel like the main component is just the quality that you get from RayBan when it comes to sunglasses, and then all the software integrations that come through Meta. So I feel like if I did price this, maybe it was more of under 300, or maybe more like 275. That would be my judgment, but overall, I do enjoy this, and I'm definitely enjoying using it over Apple Pay Later.
Yeah, and I think I think I mentioned in that same podcast he was referring to, because obviously I wear glasses. Are you able to add custom prescription lenses
I
to
believe
those?
so, yes. Mhm.
So with the cost of glasses already, because I recently went to the eye doctor and I couldn't believe how expensive just getting a new pair of glasses is.
Sorry for people who have to pay to see.
Yeah. So, like I think we were talking about last podcast, the next time I have to get a new pair of glasses and it's that much money, I might as well just get one of these where I get that, it's Meta, so take that as you will, but I get that, a camera and speakers and that integrated technology in my glasses while also having glasses. So it's like a 2-for-1.
Right.
So, and who knows, maybe by that time Apple will come out with or compete with their own version of the Vision Pro similar to those. Who knows? But I think I would be in the market for that, and I think a lot of people with glasses who don't like paying that price would also be in the market. So I think that is something we could see in the next few years.
What do you think, Cody?
I definitely think that it'd be an interesting ad. I mean, with the way that they're going with the Vision Pro, all the new drops, I feel like it could possibly happen with Apple bringing glasses into the situation. I feel like a lot of people would enjoy that, but at the same time, I just feel like that price tag on them is going to be too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you saying those are $3-something or whatever, like that's a little pricey.
Plus the prescription, how much?
Plus the prescription,
Yeah.
which is like comparing that maybe $300 to $500 added onto that.
Yeah.
I mean, and also it's like, I feel like it's also not in high demand either at the moment because, I mean, people are genuinely excited for Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Which, I very much am. And I just feel like after because this is really their test trial. They're like, it's saying it without saying it. And so since this is a very first gen product and to see how successful it is, then they can pour more money into it and then understand like how to still humanize the technology where, it somewhat gets smaller or it somewhat gets lighter and like things like that.
Yeah.
And how Apple, if anyone can do it, it's definitely Apple.
Oh yeah.
And I'm excited to see what, this Vision Pro beholds and many versions of this to come. I don't know if they're going to do maybe like a yearly cycle of this like they do with their phones, or if they'll do like a maybe couple year cycle where they come to certain iPads. We'll see how they like refresh it, but definitely it's going to be exciting to see how they finally unveil this and people can get this in their hands. So
yeah, and there's also a lot of education that has to go with a product like this, especially I think that'll be a big responsibility for their retail stores and the Apple employees to kind of have like some sort of a demo section or demo classes in their stores to really educate consumers on how to use this. Because if consumers, especially those who aren't
tech savvy,
the most tech savvy, if they don't know how to use this, I mean, you're losing a big market right there. So again, a lot of education needs to play. And also we learned with Vision Pro that the release date might be postponed a few months according to Gurman. What do you guys think about that?
I feel like kind of maybe. I also heard that there's probably going to be releasing in maybe mid-January, February, or March. Like everyone has kind of just said that's kind of what they would consider early next year.
Yeah.
April is kind of pushing it.
First 3 months are probably early. Yeah.
And then like April's kind of pushing it. May is definitely pushing it.
And then
that's like
almost
June.
half.
June is half the year away. So it's like I feel like we're giving them grace in that area of like that January, February, March era of like time frame where they should announce and release, where people can start buying it. But I feel like everything's gonna be on track for the most part. If not January, it's gonna be February. If not February, it's gonna be March. Like I believe it's gonna be in that early next year, unless something drastic happens and whatever serious thing in the world happens. And I think it will be on time.
Yeah, it seems according to Gurman too that the software teams are pretty much wrapping up their work with the Vision Pro. They released in their latest Vision OS beta version. It includes different onboarding videos and demos. And he claims that's typical with the end of a software cycle. So that could be a big clue that maybe it is coming earlier than we might think. So definitely very excited for that. I think that'll be one of the top new tech products of 2024. And I can't wait to get my hands on that, whenever that'll be.
Well, I mean, I'll probably get it first, then I'll just like
they'll probably
the
just
team
come up
try
here.
it.
I'm
So-
excited to use it.
And then with Vision Pro, with the since we'll be able to see messages, how will that react to Android with the RCS as well? So Apple just announced how they will be including in their iOS 18 update, which is supposed to be maybe their biggest redesign since the iOS 7 update. And how it will be including RCS. So RCS stands for Rich Communication Service. So it's supposed to be replacing SMS for Android. And so since Apple is going to be adopting this, it will be interesting because, it'll be a seamless experience for the most part when communicating with Android users, because you'll get like the typing indicator, and then you'll see the read and delivered receipts, and then having better video quality better video quality, and then also in its photos. And then also, the main thing though is leaving group chats that have Android users.
Oh,
in them.
finally!
That is going to be a lot better. Because then that way you don't have to make a whole new group chat if you don't need to. And oh my god, it's gonna be great.
Trust me, with my work, half the people have an Android. Every
Is
time
all the text going to be blue instead of green?
No.
Every time someone
it's
gets
still gonna be
fired,
blue.
they have to make a whole new group chat, or every time someone gets hired, it's a whole new. It's
It's a
such
hot
a
mess.
mess.
Yeah, but it's still going to be restricted to blue bubbles for iPhone, and then green bubbles for Android. Now, it would be cool if they did like a gradient version. If they did like green going into blue.
I don't think they do.
But I don't think Apple's going to do that. That'll just be too weird for them to
And
do.
I read that too, that this new change is partly as a result of a lot of outside pressure from companies like Google and Samsung, and also from the EU, which we've seen a lot in the past year.
We don't talk about Bruno.
So the EU, man, they're coming in clutch with a lot of regulating Apple.
I feel like kind of it makes sense from a loosely quoted community standpoint between different versions of people who have phones and want to have more competition. But I feel like at the same time, Apple is going to do the bare minimum, because so that way they're like, wait a minute, we're following the law, but you didn't say how to. So
They're lawyers,
when it comes to like side loading that's supposed to be coming, I feel like it's going to be very restricted with that, and it's going to be first partially in the EU, so the European Union, because it's going to be in that section of the world before Apple decides to let the rest of the world do it. And then with the standardizing of USB-C, I feel like that's the small win that I guess can help everyone out, because we have adapters and we have certain things that just would make life easier since we have everything else on USB-C. But I'm worried that since the EU is having these small wins, it's like what John Prosser said about how, you give a mouse a cookie, they'll also ask for a glass of milk, and they'll ask for a little more, and a little more, and a little more, and a little more. So it's like, what is now iPhone? What is the company Apple? Like, if they're just letting the EU just have their way with certain things, it could change the stance of Apple and the iPhone forever. So just to be mindful of that, I'm like, okay, Tim Cook, like don't let them get greedy. But I did see also on Twitter how Apple is filing a lawsuit against the EU for its, I think it's called Diplomatic Messaging Association or something like that, where how they're being forced to do things that they don't want to do, of how as a company, like, because you want to have the independence to do things as a company that you feel like it's best for its consumers. But if you're having these laws in place where it can strain that trust with the consumer, and the main thing is about privacy. That's the number one reason why Apple, part of the reason why Apple sells so well, because they implement privacy so hard and as they're one of their core foundations. So I feel like with the implementation of RCS and the implementation of side loading, it's like, how will Apple do it where it's still safe, where it doesn't cause any malware or it cause any problems with their stance on privacy and encryption, end-to-end encryption, and things like that. So
I think it'll definitely be a very interesting relationship. We'll see how that plays out in the next few years. Doesn't seem like they're being too friendly towards each other right now, but we'll see how the lawsuit settles out and how all that plays out, because it does seem like right now EU does have a lot of control over what Apple's doing, and it's not like Apple can just forget the whole European market.
that will be a whole chunk of
it's probably half their
revenue.
business, or a good portion of it. So
What do you think? What do you think about side loading and
That's a big topic for sure.
Mhm.
I do feel like Apple should have their own, like, they should be able to do whatever and not be pressured into doing other stuff that the EU wants to. But yeah, just for sure be their own separate thing and not have any sort of, I don't even know how to really phrase it, but like just not be able or not able to. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, I feel like Apple should definitely have their own say in what they do and not have to be pressured into doing what anybody else wants, because they are their own company and they shouldn't.
Especially being the U.S. company as well.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it is the consumer's choice if they to buy Apple products. No one's forcing people to buy Apple products. You know, there is the Apple ecosystem. But
and I can see, because also, I mean, even the study shown with statistics, I thought 87% of teens choose iPhone over Android. So I guess that is the dominant factor there, and I feel like the EU is trying to be like the underdog for the little man and try to have more like fairness. But I mean, Apple was built in a way where it's just so compelling to get iPhone, and then the parents decide what phone they want to get. They obviously trust more on Apple's side than Android, and Apple already implementing family features for family safety and all the things, and then Android is like playing catch up. So it's like, you can't really blame Apple for being successful, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like for sideloading, my opinion is save it for developers specifically, because not a lot of consumers are wanting to, have other options besides Apple's version of the App Store, which is, it's end-to-end encrypted, it's safe, it doesn't cause any type of viruses or anything with an iPhone. So if people want to have that option to, I feel like maybe that's the case. Maybe having that option to is okay, but just to have it and letting everyone use it, I don't think that really is safe for everyone, because some people are like, oh, well, I got this, virus or whatever, and then they want to try to blame it on Apple, and then Apple doesn't want to have all that backlash on top of other things that they go through, like, the controversy with 8 gigabytes of RAM. So it's like,
back to the beginning.
Yeah, so it's just like, come on. I feel like EU is stepping on a little bit of toes, but in some light, I'm like, okay, just give it to developers. If they're developing things for apps and they want it simpler for that, have it the form factor be like that, but don't try to make it where it's like it has to be a thing, especially since you're a whole different government, and Apple just allows their products to be sold there. Like in Russia, when they were invading Ukraine, they stopped a lot of services from there. So there could be any time that Apple pulls their products and their services from the EU if it gets out of hand. So
yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
We'll see.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, but let me go. Oh my God, I can't
English.
speak English.
It's hard.
Let us know in the comments below, what are your thoughts about sideloading? What is your thoughts about RCS? What are your thoughts on everything that we just talked about? I will be doing a 1 week later review, or loosely 1 week because it's been a minute, about my M3 Mac, about how that's been going on, and then the great pictures that I've been taking with my 15 Pro Max. It's been really, really good. And with RayBan, of how my sunglasses have been going. So if you don't want to miss out those videos, make sure to subscribe and then check out all the other videos from the podcast or from my videos below in the when you subscribe. And this is Elijah, Max, and Colton, and we'll all see you in another video.
Bye.
Peace out.